talked about this with Renato Moicano. Dana White yesterday gets on social media and says it's time to change the rankings. Once and for all, it is time to change the rankings. He was very upset that Khalil Roundtree, after the incredible performance against Alex Pereira, was not moved up. He did not go up from 8 to, 5, 4, 3, 2. Here's what Dana White said yesterday on social media.
All right, here we go. I know it's reversed. Can't see it on here. But the moron strike again. Khalil Roundtree fights that badass fight against Pereira, and the morons rank him number 8. Keep him at number 8. Literally this week, I have a meeting to try to fix the rankings and get all these know-nothing, do-nothing motherfuckers out of it. So hopefully this week I get this fixed. Have a great day, everybody.
And here are said panel members that he's talking about. Now, they no longer actually write the names of the people. He now, or they now, on UFC.com/rankings, at the very bottom of the page, they put the outlets, okay? They put the outlets of the people that he is so mad about, where they work, where they represent, or who they are representing when they're taking part. So the UFC came out, and keep this up here for a minute. The UFC came out with these rankings a year into their deal with Fox. It was actually a Fox thing because Fox felt when they're doing these cards, 6 versus 3, 4 versus 8 meant something to the casual fan as opposed to Dan Hooker versus Bobby Green. So they wanted rankings. So first it was 10. Then, the cards got a little more watered down. So they wanted 15. So they could say 13 versus 11 and 15 versus 10, etc. So they started these rankings, and Dana White never wanted rankings. He never wanted rankings, but they kept it, and it became a nice promotional tool. The rankings were always independent of the UFC, so we were told, where it's the media is going to take part. Now, they invited all of us to take part. A lot of people, including myself, said we don't feel comfortable because we don't want to have a say in how matchups are being put together. So I just didn't feel like it was something that I wanted to be a part of. I think rankings are great. They're important. They mean something, but ultimately, in this day and age of the UFC, they don't mean much. Witness the fact that Khalil Roundtree, number 8, got a title shot over people who are higher ranked than him. So what does it mean? What's the point, ultimately, if they don't lead to the best fighting the best and title fights? These are where these people that he's talking about are coming from. KOHN Honolulu, that's a local Honolulu station. MMA Oddsbreaker. CFMU 93.3. I have no idea where that is. Burstprac.se. Fight News. Fight Network, which no longer really covers MMA from a news perspective. Gazeta Esportiva. Cherokee Scout. Burbank Leader. MMA Weekly. KIOZ 105.3. Another random radio station. VladuSport.com. Wrestling Observer. Top Turtle Podcast. My MMA News, MMA Fight Radio, Boxeo Mundial, Kimura.se, MMA Soldier, MMA Nyut, Blood and Sweat, Insight Fighting Radio. Now, I'm not trying to disparage any of these names. I'm not trying to put these people down or these outlets down. This is not top-tier MMA outlets. It's just not. You're not seeing the biggest names in MMA media. I hope that's not an insult to anyone. And then, who are the people? I have actually joked in the past that they're not real people. That it's actually, it's bots. That's what I've said. Now, I know that is weird now because they're talking about AI and all this stuff. They're talking about actually putting it to the computers to do it. Here's what I would say. Yes, thank you. It's about time. They instituted these, I think, in 2013, 11 years ago. I would say to Dana White, thank you. Please get rid of them. Please do away with them once and for all. End the charade. End the charade that these are real. End the charade that you guys even listen to them. End the charade that there's actual people from credible outlets that cover MMA on a daily basis, because that's what it should be. It shouldn't be the guy who likes MMA, who works at the radio station that maybe talks about MMA once a year when Conor McGregor fights or is in the news. End the charade. Wipe it all out. It's embarrassing that it's even a part of the UFC, that this is even used sometimes to dictate matchups. It shouldn't be. We shouldn't have a say. And make your own. Make your own. I would actually be more interested in who the UFC thinks is in the top 5 in the light heavyweight division. And I would be more interested to, on Tuesday morning, wake up and be like, oh, okay, they have now Khalil at 3 after that performance. You book the fights anyways. You ignore the rankings anyways. You do whatever you want anyways. So let us know what you're thinking. You let us know what you're thinking by making the fights. Get us in there a little closer. Let us see how the sausage is made. You make the rankings. I want to know what Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard think. That is more interesting to me than this fakakta make-believe ranking system that you guys have in place that you don't even pay attention to begin with. So why are you getting mad about it? Why is it thrown in our face? Why do we even have to talk about it as a talking point? If you think that Benoit Saint-Denis is on the level of Dustin Poirier, let us know. Book that. And tell us that it's actually 5 versus 4. It's actually 6 versus 9, whatever it is. Do away with it. Kill it. Make the official UFC rankings. Let us know what you think. And then ultimately, the whole thing makes more sense because you're booking the fights anyway and you're ignoring the rankings. If the rankings were a real thing that you actually respected, Khalil Rountree doesn't get a title shot. But they aren't a real thing and you don't respect them. So just do away with them. Get rid of them. Go ahead. I am giving you the green light. I am empowering you to do away with them, move on, rid yourself of this stress and of this talking point. And I don't know if it's fun to have the media as a punching bag, but I don't even know if these people cover MMA anymore. I mean, honestly, some of them I'm quite certain don't. The Fight Network doesn't cover MMA like that. It's a channel that just airs like fights and Impact Wrestling and maybe the odd Invicta, of course, but like there's no one there covering it. There's no journalists there anymore. Do away with it. Be done with it. Create the official UFC rankings. And that's actually interesting fodder. That's interesting content that I would be interested in actually consuming. Does anyone disagree with me?
Well, CFMU is that's a campus community radio station at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario.
Wow. Okay. Well, I take it all back.
Shout out to the Top Turtle podcast. You'd think the Iron Turtle would get a little bit more love.
Can you look up the Top Turtle podcast right now? When's the last time they put out an episode?
No. This week.
Okay, my bad.
They got
Shout out to Top Turtle. Let's not disparage.
I'm not trying to disparage, but I know for a fact Fight Network doesn't cover news and stuff like that. There it is. Wait, is Top Turtle Moicano?
No. But maybe that's how Dan Hooker got so high in the rankings. Oh, yeah, they got sponsorships and everything.
Okay.
The point. Daniel Pineda on.
I don't want to make this is not about them. I'm not disparaging, but like it can't be this way anymore. It can't.
Why?
I agree with you. They ignore the rankings anyway. So why does it matter?
That's why. There's your answer, Rick. What are they getting mad about if they ignore the rankings?
Yeah, but who other than Dana White, who cares?
Right.
Don't you think it's
my thing is only Dana White cares. Nobody else cares.
He just gave the number 8 ranked guy a title shot. Why can't he just do it again?
Don't you think it would be more interesting if we looked up and said like, oh wow, they got Ian Gary at number 4 now? Great.
I don't know if I love that just because like if I'm a fighter, right? Now I know that the UFC is deciding that, right? If I'm Renato Moicano, I don't want them to go, oh, I actually think you're number 4 versus number 3. That could create some dicey situations. I like Renato's suggestion. 2 points. Just 2 points.
It gets complicated.
What's complicated about that?
Don't you just feel like if the UFC can't like
that's the least complicated. If you win, you get 3 points. If you win by knockout, you get 6 points. Let's see where you're at. That's it. Who cares? It's super simple.
PFL, baby.
Well, yeah, not that.
Well, I think Bellator had rankings, and they just did them themselves, right? For a minute there, they were just like...
there was a panel for that. Maybe I'm wrong.
There was a panel.
Maybe there was.
Because they asked me to be on it, and I said,
I understand
absolutely not.
the thought behind
you
this.
said no, Pizzi?
I said no, too.
Well,
Yeah.
a lot of,
both.
I mean, to the point, Ariel was talking about, who's on it. To the most respected outlets would not do it, right? Because there's a potential conflict there. They don't necessarily want to participate in something that's done by the promotion. If there was an independent body who was not the UFC that was doing a ranking and panelists were asked to vote, I imagine they'd have better turnout in terms of the top names participating. Maybe not. Maybe they don't want to be involved in that anyway. But because the UFC runs it or because Bellator runs it, obviously that creates some potential conflict. But I just don't I don't think anybody cares about this other than Dana White. I truly don't.
I do.
Renato Moicano.
He does?
I do think I think it's harder to get rid of it now that they've established it. We were happy before this had occurred, right? We were all kind of saying, why do we need rankings? The problem is introducing them and taking them away. With like a new generation of fans getting used to this model, I think I don't know, it's just confusing to some degree. You know, you mentioned at the start there, Ariel, Dana talking about AI doing the rankings there. I think it was last month or so. Just out of interest, I opened up some ChatGPT earlier and I got them to rank the UFC's 205 division.
Do it.
Ilir Latifi was number 10. and guess what?
What? Who's number 1?
Khalil Roundtree was not in the rankings.
All
What the fuck is that?
Yes. Oh,
Well, you know, you just want to, like,
that's a good spot
I'm sure
for him.
there's
Somebody said
More-
data
more
this so you can
sophisticated.
scrap the AI version because that's not going to go over well.
yeah.
I get the intent. Look, there's an ambition here that I can understand and respect, right? To have an independent body vote for it, right? Unless I'm mistaken, and again, it's hard because we don't really know who the people are on this panel. If the UFC is not influencing that vote, then it is technically an independent ranking, right? Like the people who are participating are not encouraged or changed to or forced to submit a certain order. And so therefore that ranking is a ranking of the people. Now, do people disagree with the rankings provided by these people? Yes. But what I would argue is if we had the heaviest hitters in MMA ranking this, you would end up with nearly exactly the same list or a list that is slightly different and people would still disagree with it. There is no consensus on this. This is why these debates exist. This is why pound for pound and GOAT and all these stupid conversations that everybody has get so heated and go back and forth, is because this is subjective and not that type of thing. And so I don't know if they'll get any better. Like, I think the rankings are fine and they're just
You don't think it would be
flawed
interesting
and
if the
broken.
UFC came out with their own rankings?
I do. I think that'd be interesting because then they're showing their cards, right? They're saying,
Yeah.
this is what we think. But I don't think that would be good for business. If the UFC says to fighter 5, we value you more than fighter 8, that's kind of not
Well, it's
gonna
not so
do-
much a value thing. Like, hey,
It certainly is a value
Moicano, you just beat up Benoit Saint Denis. We now think you're 4. All right, cool.
That's value.
You don't think they can manipulate this though? You don't think they manipulate that if they have
100%.
an event coming up? Yeah, well then it's another complication.
But why
Like, it's
why
just-
this charade? The charade that this is actually a real thing
Yeah,
when
it's all just
It
a
could
charade.
be a real thing.
It's just a
if
way
it
to
was
sell
points-based.
fights.
Just do points based. To the point you made, which is a completely valid one, they don't go by rankings anyway, right? They're not going number 1 fights number 2. Number 1 always fights number 2, or number 2 always fights number. So do points. You'll have a ranking system. You have the numbers next to the name. Nothing goes away. And you just decide who you want to get title shots, just like you were doing before. Take it out of everybody's hands. Just do points.
I think points is tricky,
It's
man.
so
like
convoluted.
I understand. I understand what
How
you're
do you get
saying.
points by finishes, first round knockouts, submissions. Like
Some
It's
mathematician come
it's-
up with the system.
I hate points. I hate
Yeah.
points when people suggest them for scoring. It's just too complicated. It reminds me of like Olympic boxing.
It's the opposite. It's the easiest possible solution. Factoring humans into the equation to go, I like this win.
Or-
more than
okay,
this
or how
win,
about this? How
is
about
the
this?
the complication you don't need.
Well,
This is the
How about this?
simple-
How about this? How about this? Just get rid of them. No rankings.
Sure.
Go back. By the
I
way,
think that's tough though.
yeah, they're not going to do that.
the UFC
You
was
can't-
just fine
you
with
can't
that.
I know, but it's a good
introduce
way
it
to
to get rid of
sell
it.
It's a good way to sell fights.
It legitimizes the sport in a way for people who don't care about these rankings, and that's 99.999%.
Exactly. You don't know who these guys are, but it's 2 top 15
Right.
lightweights
Right.
battling it out.
Well, it's just
Nothing is more broken than anything else. It's completely broken, but by design. There is no way to fix this if you're going to introduce people voting for this panel. They're
It's
always
tough.
going to come up with bad results. That's just how this goes.
Let me on the panel.
so this
Would
Dana's
you- okay,
reaction
Forget
is
conflict
just
of
like
interest. I'll hop on.
Would you? And by the way,
I'll
we are
start
lucky
voting.
enough to have a member of our team manning the YouTube channel, who was a part of the UFC when they launched in this endeavor back in the day. The great Ant Evans, and he tells us that Yahoo, ESPN, MMA Fighting, MMA Junkie all refused Week 1 to be a part of the UFC rankings. Most citing conflict of interest. UFC have cited independent rankings in a congressional hearing, quote unquote independent. They are well aware they are open to all sorts of bad optics and accusations doing their own. All right, so they're not going to do their own. I think they should do their own because to me, ultimately, we're doing the fights. We're picking the matchups. We're deciding who gets bonuses, who gets opportunities to advance their career or not. End the charade and just wipe the wipe this notion away that this is a real thing that they even care about, because they don't, and they don't adhere to it or listen to it or respect it or honor it. So what's the point?